within-person variability, or consistency, is an important focus of research in a variety of areas. Example, Baer, Liu, and Lucas, 2006, Gleason, 2001, 2007, Gibbons and Rupp, 2009, Oy, Hu, and Aguini, 2010. Frequency estimation-based assessment offers a viable approach to the measurement of personality and within-person variability. Edwards and Bohr, 2007. The purpose of the present research was to evaluate the efficacy of frequency estimation for personality measurement with respect to the assessment of both mean level and consistency/variability. We compared a frequency estimation-based response format to a traditional Likert-based response format. Arguably, the viability and efficacy of this approach rests on two considerations. Recently, researchers have become increasingly interested in methods of capturing the consistency of behavior. Example, Gleason, 2001, Gibbons and Rupp, 2009, Hegestad, Gordon, and Reed, 2009, Wang and Ryan, 2009, Scott, Colquitt, Paddock, and Judge, 2010, Weinblatt and Heller, 2009. Specifically, the examination of within-person variability, or consistency, is an important focus of research in a variety of areas. Example, Baer, Liu, and Lucas, 2006, Gleason, 2001, 2007, Gibbons and Rupp, 2009, Oy, Hu, and Aguini, 2010. Frequency estimation-based assessment offers a viable approach to the measurement of personality and within-person variability. Edwards and Bohr, 2007. The purpose of the present research was to evaluate the efficacy of frequency estimation for personality measurement with respect to the assessment of both mean level and consistency/variability. We compared a frequency estimation-based response format to a traditional Likert-based response format. Arguably, the viability and efficacy of this approach rests on two considerations. First, frequency estima. Time-based assessments of the level of specific personality traits should demonstrate psychometric characteristics, i.e., reliability and validity, similar to those of more commonly used measurement approaches, i.e., Likert-type response scales. Second, the frequency estimation-based approach should add relevant informat ion pertaining to the assessment of personality variability that is not available from single administrations of Likert scales. We present the results of 3 separate studies designed to directly address these issues. 1.1. Personality variability. Recently, several researchers have called for a broader view regarding the measurement and conceptualization of personality. More specifically, within-person consistency of trait-relevant behavior has been put forth as an important variable to consider, in addition to individuals' mean level or relative standing on personality traits. Baird et al., 2006, Baumeister, 1991, Boehm and Allen, 1974, Bysans and West, 2000, Bysans, West, and Graziano, 1998, Brown and Moskowitz, 1998, Servone, 2004, Gleason, 2001, 2007, Gleason and Light, 2006, Gleason, Milano, and Akil, 2002, Michel and Shota, 1998. The general idea is that any given individual behaves differently on different occasions. Thus, an individual's 0092-6566/$, see Front Matter 2011 Elsevier Incorporated. All rights reserved. DOI 10.1016/J.JRP.2011.06.009. Corresponding author. Address: Human Resources Research Organization, 66, Canal Center Plaza, Suite 700, Alexandria, Virginia, 22314-1591, United States. Email address: Fleischer@hummer.org, Fleischer@hummer.org, MS Fleischer. Journal of Research in Personality XXX, 2011, XXX. Contents list available at Science Direct. Journal of Research in Personality. Journal homepage: www.elsevier.com/locate/JRP. Please cite this article in press as Fleischer, M.S. et al. Assessing Within-Person Personality Variability via Frequency Estimation. More evidence for a new measurement approach. Journal of Research in Personality, 2011, DOI 10.1016/J.JRP.2011.06.009. Behavior over time forms a distribution with respect to a given trait, and the various characteristics of this distribution, example, mean, variance, etc., are relevant to the measurement of personality. Imper-tant information related to the variance of a given trait cannot be captured with a mean score alone. Accordingly, Gleason, 2001, called for movement away from an exclusive focus on assessments of central tendency in personality measurement to an examination of the density distributions of trait-relevant behavior. Other reasons for investigating new measurement approaches for assessing personality include two primary criticisms leveled at traditional direct report self-perceptions of personality. A. Weak correlations with behavior, and B. Susceptibility to socially desirable responding. Personality research in general has been criticized because the relationship between personality variables and behavior is relatively weak. Example, Arthur, War, and Graziano. 2001, Mischel, 1968, Peters, Van Tweegel, Ruda, and Raymond, 2006. And this may be in part due to the limitations of traditional measurement systems. For example, the uncorrected mean validity coefficients between self-reports of conscientiousness and job performance reported in the meta-analytic literature are approximately 8.13, Barrick and Mount, 1991, Hoff, Eaton, Dennett, Camp, and McCoy, 1990, Hertz and Donovan, 2000. However, we should point out that some recent research has demonstrated stronger relationships between personality and behavior. Example, Back, Schmuckli, and Egloff, 2009, Leeson and Gallagher, 2009. Self-report-based personality assessment has also been directly criticized because many items are rather transparent, making them susceptible to socially desirable responding. Example of James, 1998, James and Mazerol, 2002. To date, there is a sizable amount of empirical evidence indicating that response distortion reduces the accuracy of self-reports and also attenuates the criterion-related validity of personal ITY tests. Example of Bain, Wenger, Davison, and Van Hook, 2004, Holden, 2007, 2008, White, Young, Hunter, and Rumsey, 2008. A small but growing body of research has examined the role of within-person variability, or temporal consistency, as a potential moderator of the relationship between personality and relevant external criteria. Example, Baumeister and Tice, 1988, Bicens and West, 2000, Bicens et al., 1998. This approach is based on the assumption that low correlations between measured personality and really advanced outcomes might occur if personality influences behavior to a larger extent for some individuals than for others. Bain and Allen, 1974. For example, research indicates that behavioral consistency moderates the magnitude of self-other agreement on ratings of personality. Bain and Allen, 1974. Bicens et al., 1998. Edwards and Bohr, 2007. So, accurate measurement of personality, as well as the prediction of behavioral outcomes, requires not only information about an individual's trait level, but also the extent to which that trait will influence behavior for the individual, i.e., degree of consistency. That is, two individuals may have equivalent levels of a given personality trait, but differ in traitness, or on the degree of consistency with which this trait influences behavior. Baumeister and Tice, 1988. Baumeister and Tice postulated that more trait individuals will demonstrate more consistent behavior with respect to that trait than less trait individuals. Thus, individuals with higher levels of traitness should yield stronger personality-behavior relationships. Conceptually, within-person variability reflects the extent to which the same individual acts differently on different occasions. Historically, researchers have operationalized consistency in a number of different ways. Some researchers have viewed consistency as nomothetic cross-situational consistency and simply asked respondents to provide an estimate of their overall level of behavioral consistency with respect to a particular personality. Mentioned. Aimlang and Borkenau, 1986, however, noted that this approach has very low retest reliability. Other researchers have operationalized within-person variability in terms of response patterns. Specifically, consistency across items assessing the same dimension has been used as an index of within-person variability, i.e., dimension level standard deviation. There are, however, a number of problems associated with this approach, not the least of which is that it does not provide information on consistency within situations over time. Bicens et al., 1998. Another approach to operationalizing consistency stems from the work of Alfort, 1937, who emphasized consistency within situations over time, i.e., temporal response pattern stability. For example, Bicens et al., 1998, found that the level of self-other agreement on the dimensions of extroversion and conscientiousness was moderated by the participants' response consistency. Their results suggested that high levels of temporal consistency of behavior within situations, i.e., responses to the same behavioral items across measurement sessions, increased the predictability of the personality dimensions by external observers. Other studies have demonstrated the efficacy of measuring behavioral consistency using a multiple measurement approach called Expiry in sampling methodology, ESM. Example, Baird et al., 2006, Leeson, 2001, Hegestad et al., 2009. However, there are disadvantages for each of the previous approaches to measuring behavioral consistency. Thus, Edwards and Rohr, 2007, evaluated a novel approach to obtaining personality variability information, frequency estimation-based personality assessment. The following sections describe the basis for this approach and initial research examining its validity. 1.2. Frequency estimation as a basis for assessment. Research over the last 4 decades has established that humans may be capable of recalling event frequencies with appreciable degrees of accuracy. Kosmides and Tooby, 1996. Kane and Bohr, 2006. Steiner, Rain, and Smalley, 1993. For example, in a meta-analysis of the accuracy of frequency estimation, Kane and Bohr, 2006, found a mean sample size weighted correlation of 0.73 between frequency estimates and actual frequency counts. Further, a stream of research within this domain has provided evidence that many cognitive heuristic-based biases, example Tversky and Kahneman, 1973, 1974, largely disappear when judgments are made in terms of frequencies as opposed to probabilities. Gigerenzer, 1991, Sedlmeier, Hertwig, and Gigerenzer, 1998. It has been suggested that the high levels of accuracy and sensitivity observed in frequency estimation may occur because this process parallels the way in which people naturally encode, store, recall, and process behavioral and event FRE. Quincy, Kosmides and Tooby, 1996. Thus, frequency estimation may reduce cognitive load during the assessment process because it may be easier for respondents to recall event frequencies than to mentally calculate an average level across time, as required by typical Likert-type formats. Measurement systems based on frequency estimation require individuals to report the absolute or relative frequency of occurrence for specific outcomes or behaviors over a specified time period. Kane, 1986, 2000. The result of such assessments is a frequency distribution that portrays the range of the individual's behavior. Typical descriptive summary measures, including central tendency and variability, may be calculated from this distribution. To date, frequency-based measurement has been predominantly examined in the context of organizational performance appraisal ratings. Dedrick and Gardner, 1997, Kane, 1986, 1996, 2000, Kane and Lawler, 1979, Steiner et al., 1993, Rohr and Miller, 1997. Through empirical testing, several positive characteristics of distributional assessment have emerged. A. Individuals are able to detect differences in the distributional characteristics of performance even when mean levels are constant. Steiner et al., 1993. B. Frequency-based estimates generally contain less measurement error than traditional estimates of performance. Rohr and Miller. 2. M.S. Fleischer et al. / Journal of Research in Personality XXX, 2011, XXX. Please cite this article in press as Fleischer, M.S. et al. Assessing within-person personality variability via frequency estimation. More evidence for a new measurement approach. Journal of Research in Personality, 2011, doi 10.1016/j.jrp.2011.06.009. 1997, and C. Within-person temporal consistency information, provided uniquely by distributional assessment, is predictive of inter-rater agreement. Rohr and Miller, 1997. However, the primary advantage of frequency-based estimation compared to traditional point, or mean, estimation, example, with the use of Likert-type formats, is that frequency estimates can be used to derive a metric of temporal stability within situations, i.e., mean within item bar I-ability, resulting in a more complete description of the underlying trait distribution. Kane, 2000. 1.3. Distributional assessment and the measurement of the Big Five. Edwards and Rohr, 2007, proposed the application of a frequency-based measurement system for the assessment of personality. Specifically, they argued that Likert-type response formats, typically used on personality inventories, require individual ALS to reach a cognitive summary of their behavior over time. For example, a respondent may view an item stem such as I am the life of the party as representative of their behavior most, but not all of the time. Yet the response format requires respondents to record a summary index of the extent to which the statement describes their behavior, example, a 4 out of 5 on a Likert-type scale, or agreed. Such summary responses do not allow for any quantification of the extent to which the individual's behavior may vary over time. Therefore, Edwards and Rohr proposed the use of a frequency-based response format using the same item stems. 2 example items, 1 frequency-based scale and 1 Likert-type scale, are presented in Appendix A. A comparison of the same IPIP item stems with both response formats, frequency and Likert, Goldberg's unipolar markers may assure and published IPIP normative data revealed that the average correlation of the frequency-based IPUP measure with the Goldberg unipolar markers was 0.81, 0.96 when corrected for attenuation. These correlations would be interpreted as higher than average retest reliabilities, and thus support the equivalence of the measures. Edwards and Rohr also presented a confirmatory factor analysis, CFA, tested the equivalence of the correlation matrix among the 5 personality dimensions using the IPIP Likert measure and the same matrix using the IPIP frequency-based response format and found no significant differences. Edwards and Rohr, 2007, also demonstrated that the measure of temporal stability obtained via the frequency-based response format, which is not available with the Likert type format, moderated self-other. Agreement for the dimensions of extroversion, agreeableness, and emotional stability. These results are consistent with studies measuring temporal stability with multiple measurement approaches. Example, Bysans and West, 2000, Bysans et al., 1998. The present study represents the next step in a programmatic line of research investigating the efficacy of the frequency-based response format and thus builds on the work of Edwards and Rohr, 2007. To this end, we report the results of 3 separate studies. The primary focus of Edwards and Rohr was to demonstrate the psychometric equivalency of the Likert and frequency estimation-based scales using the same item stems, and thus they did not provide evidence with respect to relationships with non-personality variables. Thus, we sought to examine and compare the relationships among the big 5 personality dimensions, assessed using both the frequency-based and traditional Likert scales, and a set of relevant non-personality measures. In addition, it may be argued that the real value of a consistency measure is that it moderates personality behavior relationships. Consequently, we also sought to investigate the extent to which a frequency estimation-based measure of consistency does indeed moderate the personality behavior relationship. Finally, we also sought to examine the potential moderating role of measurement format on susceptibility to socially desirable responding. In Study 1, we examined the relationship of frequency-based personality assessments with self-report ratings of 3 trait-based motivational variables, i.e., motivation orientation, goal orientation, and need for cognition, that previous theory and research suggests are significant correlates of various personality dimensions. Example, Barrett, Stewart, and Petrowski, 2002, Hoff, 1992, Sadowski and Cogburn, 1997. In Study 2, we focused on non-self-report-based assessments of behavior. Specifically, we examined the relationship of frequency-based personality assessments of both level and variability with external observer ratings of performance. Finally, in Study 3, we examined the extent to which frequency-based estimation of personality differs in susceptibility to conscious response distortion as compared to the traditional Likert type response format. 2. Study 1. Edwards and Rohr, 2007, provided evidence for the psychometric equivalency of the frequency-based and Likert type May assurement formats in assessing mean-level personality. To do so, they held constant the item stems and only varied the scale response format. From a methodological standpoint, this represented the strictest test of equivalency to enhance internal validity. However, from a theoretical standpoint, equivalency should also hold when one compares alternative measures of the same construct. That is, the frequency estimation-based scale should be an effective method if used interchangeably with different measures of the same construct, example, the Big Five. Thus, to test the robustness of the frequency estimation scale, Study 1 builds upon the findings of Edwards and Rohr by utilizing 2 different measures of the Big Five with different item stems and different response formats, i.e., frequency-based and Likert type. Specify. Cali, we wanted to provide further evidence of convergent validity for the frequency-based measure. Therefore, we included a well-established Likert type measure of the Big Five in addition to the frequency-based scale for purposes of comparison. We predicted comparable psychometric properties, example, coefficient alpha, similar pattern of correlations among dimensions, and also similar pattern of correlations with other motivational constructs. The present study also extends the findings of Edwards and Rohr, 2007, by examining not only the internal equivalence of frequency-based and Likert type personality measures, but also their relationships with other non-personality constructs, i.e., self-reported motivational variables. In selecting the motivational constructs for Study 1, we relied on the extant literature. Personal ITY has been postulated to be a distal predictor of behavior, Canfer, 1991, McRae and Costa, 1996. As such, we focused on a proposed mediator of the personality/behavior relationship, motivation. Example, Barrett, 2002. Mitchell, 1997, defined motivation as the psychological processes involved in the arousal, direction, intensity, and persistence of voluntary actions that are goal-directed, page 60. Distal personality traits are believed to act through more proximal motivational constructs to affect behavior. Canfer, 1991, McRae and Costa, 1996. Thus, we examined the relationships between frequency-based and Likert-type personality measures and 3 different motivational variables in Study 1. We chose motivation orientation, goal orientation, and need for cognition because of the theoretical links and published empirical relationships between these variables and the Big 5 personality dimensions. Barrick et al., 2002, argued that motivation orientation consists of the 3 dimensions of communion striving, status striving, and accomplishment striving, all of which are theoretically linked to different Big 5 factors. Barrick et al., 2002. Based on Barrick et al. S. 2002, rationale and previous research findings, we. M.S. Fleischer et al. / Journal of Research in Personality XXX, 2011, XXX3. Please cite this article in press as Fleischer, M.S. et al. Assessing within-person personality variability via frequency estimation, more evidence for a new measurement approach. Journal of Research in Personality, 2011, doi 10.1016/j.jrp.2011.06.009. Expected to find statistically significant positive relationships between agreeableness and communion striving, extroversion and communion striving, extroversion and status striving, conscientiousness and status striving, and conscientiousness and accomplishment striving. Previous research has also demonstrated that different goal orientations are related to the Big 5 factors. Goal orientation refers to a somewhat stable individual difference that may be influenced by situational characteristics, and is defined as a preference for goal type in achievement situations. Payne, Youngcourt, and Beaubien, 2007. Historically, goal orientation has been defined as a preference for either performance goals or learning goals, but Tun, Matthew, and Zajac, 1996. More recently, Van de Waal, 1997, described 3 dimensions: learning goal orientation, LGO, performance proof goal orientation, PPGO, and performance avoid goal orientation, PAGO. PPGO represents a desire to prove one's competence and gain favorable judgments, while a PAGO sense a desire to avoid disapproval. LGO refers to learning a task for its own sake or to achieve mastery. We expect the different dimensions of the Big 5 to relate to these motivational variables. Example, Elliott and Church, 1997, Hoff, 1992, Payne et al., 2007. For example, Payne et al., 2007, found that extroversion, conscientiousness, openness, agreeableness, and emotional stability were positively related to LGO and negatively related to PAGO, and that emotional stability was negatively related to PPGO. Need for cognition, NFC, refers to individual differences in motivation for cognitive processing. Cacioppo and Petty, 1982. Individuals high in NFC are willing to entertain new ideas and engage in effortful and rational cognitive processing. Thus, NFC should be positively related to openness to experience and conscientiousness, and negatively related to emotional stability. Sadowski and Cogburn, 1997. 2.1, Study 1 Method. 2.1.1, Participants in procedure undergraduate psychology students, N equals 123, were recruited to participate in return for partial fulfillment of course requirements. There were 49 males and 74 females. The mean age of participants was 20.3, SD equals 5.2. Participants were presented with an online survey using SPSS's Mr. Interview 3.0 software, SPSS Incorporated, 2005. As a part of the study, demographic information, example, gender, age, year in college, was collected along with the study data. Participation was voluntary and anonymous. Informed consent was obtained from the participants prior to their completing the measures. Students signed up to participate in the experiment and were sent an email containing a link to the measures. 2.1.2, Measures 2.1.2.1. Mini markers. Saussures, 1994, 40-item mini marker subset of Goldberg, 1992, 100 unipolar markers was administered to participants. The inventory is comprised of 40 adjectives characterizing each of the 5 factors, 8 adjectives for each factor. Respondents were asked how accurately each of the 40 trait descriptive adjectives describes them using a 7-point scale. 1 equals very inaccurate, 7 equals very accurate. As such, the scale format used for the mini markers was a Likert type rating scale. Respondent scores were obtained by reverse scoring the appropriate items and averaging the scores for all 8 items on each factor. Internal consistency estimates, i.e., coefficient alpha, for scores on the Big 5 mini markers are presented in Table 1. 2.1.2.2, 50-item International Personality Item Pool, IPIP, scale, Goldberg, 1999, IPIP, 2008. The 50-item IPIP scale is a subset of 50 items from the 2036 items in the IPIP that have high factor loadings on the Big Five personality factors based on normative data. The 50-item IPIP scale was developed to measure the phenotypic personality characteristics of the Big Five factors of personal IDY with 10 items measuring each of the 5 factors. This measure was administered with the frequency-based measurement rating scale. Specifically, participants were asked to estimate the relative frequency that each of 3 response categories, very inaccurate, neither accurate nor inaccurate, very accurate, reflected their behavior with respect to the item stem over the previous 6 months. Participants were required to assign percentage values to each response level such that the total summed to 100. Instructions in 2 example items, one for frequency-based scale and one Likert type scale with the same item stem, are presented in Appendix A. The frequency-based responses were collected in the form of 3 percentages for each item, with the percentages summing to 100. These percentages needed to be combined into a single score for each item. To do this, each response level was assigned a scale value, very inaccurate equals 0.01, neither accurate nor inaccurate equals 0.04, very accurate equals 0.07, and each scale value was weighted. Table 1 means standard deviations, and internal consistency estimates for all variables in Study 1. Variable frequency-based IPIP Likert type measures. MSDAM-1. Extroversion 4.10.87.774.531.23.892. Agreeableness 4.960.94.825.530.93.853. Conscientiousness 4.420.91.784.761.09.844. Emotional stability 4.070.99.844.071.01.805. Openness to experience 4.770.79.775.480. Note: N equals 1. For MS Fleischer et al. /Journal of Research. Please cite this article in press by the percentage recorded for the response level. Finally, the set of 3 weighted scale values was summed. This resulted in a score on each item ranging from 1 to 7, the same scale as the Likert type unipolar adjectives. The item scores were then used to compute scale scores and internal consistency estimates. Respondent scale scores on each personality dimension were obtained by averaging the 10 items corresponding to each of the 5 factors. In addition, the frequency-based response format allows for a measurement of within-item variability not possible with the standard response format. As described by Kane, 1986, we calculated a measure of this variability as the standard deviation of the distribution of an item reflected in the percentages assigned. For example, if percent ages were assigned to an item such that the respondent indicated that half of their behavior was not at all accurately described by the item and half of their behavior was very accurately described by the item, then the standard deviation of a distribution in which half of the scores were 1s and half of the scores were 7s would reflect the within-item variability. We then used the mean within-item SD across the 10 items corresponding to each of the 5 personality dimensions as a measure of dimensional, consistency. Internal consistency estimates, i.e., coefficient alpha, for scores on the 50-item IPIP scale, both Likert and frequency-based, are presented in Table 1. 2.1.2.3 Motivation Orientation. Motivation orientation was assured with the 43-item Motivation Orientation Questionnaire, Barrick et al., 2002. Respondents were asked to provide information about their attitudes towards school. Responses were provided on a 5-point Likert type scale, 1 equals strongly disagree, 5 equals strongly agree. This measure has 3 factors representing Mitchell's, 1997, 3 motivational intentions, A. Accomplishment striving, B. Status striving, and C. Communion striving. Example items where I frequently think about ways to advance and obtain better grades, and I am challenged by a desire to be a team player. A confirmatory factor analysis confirmed that the fit of the 3-factor model, V2, 857, equals 1,777.07, RMSEA equals 0.09, CFI equals 0.92, TLI equals 0.91, was significantly better than that of the 1-factor model, V2, 860, equals 2,734.41, RMSEA equals 0.17, CFI equals 0.83, TLI equals 0.82. Therefore, we decided to analyze the data separately for each of the 3 dimensions. Internal consistency estimates, i.e., coefficient. Alpha, for motivation orientation scores were accomplishment striving at equals 0.92, status striving at equals 0.92, and communion striving at equals 0.88. 2.1.2.4, goal orientation. Goal orientation was measured with the 20-item measure from Button et al., 1996. Respondents were asked to provide information about their attitudes towards the completion of school-related tasks. Responses were provided on a 5-point Likert type scale. 1 equals strongly disagree, 5 equals strongly agree. This measure has two factors, performance goal orientation and learning goal orientation. However, a confirmatory factor analysis confirms that the Fitter-Van der Waals, 1997, three-factor model, V2167 equals 351.22, RMSEA equals 0.09, CFI equals 0.89, TLI equals 0.88, was significantly better than that of the two-factor model, V2169 equals 374.09, RMSEA equals 0.10, CFI equals 0.88, TLI equals 0.87. Therefore, we decided to analyze the data separately for each of the three dimensions, LGO, PPGO, and PAGO. Internal consistency estimates, i.e., coefficient alpha, for the goal orientation scores were as follows: LGO equals 0.77, PPGO equals 0.67, and PAGO equals 0.82. 2.1.2.5, Need for Cognition. NFC was measured with 34 items from Cacioppo and Petty, 1982. Respondents were asked to provide information about their attitudes towards school-related tasks and goals. Responses were provided on a 5-point Likert type scale. 1 equals strongly disagree, 5 equals strongly agree. An example item is I really enjoy a task that involves coming up with new solutions to problems. The measure was scored by obtaining the mean of the 34 items. A confirmatory factor analysis yielded a moderate one-dimensional fit that was better than other variations and consistent with the design of the measure. V2, 527, equals 944.58, RMSEA equals 0.08, CFI equals 0.91, TLI equals 0.90. The internal consistency estimate for the NFC scores was at equals 0.90. 2.2, Study 1 results. The means, standard deviations, and internal consistency estimates for the frequency-based IFIP and Likert type unipolar markers for each of the big 5 personality dimensions and the motivational variables are presented in Table 1. Differences between coefficient alphas provided by the frequency-based and Likert type measures were examined for each of the big 5 personality dimensions using Bonnet's 2003, Fisher-Bonnet approach, Kim and Felt, 2008 EQ 9. Of the 5 comparisons, none were statistically significant, indicating statistically equivalent reliability across the 2 measurement formats. We also calculated coefficient alpha for the estimates of temporal consistency from the frequency-based scale for each dimension. These were calculated in the same way as traditional scale reliabilities, except that the within-item SD for each item comprising a given dimension served as input into the analysis rather than item. Responses. These values ranged from 0.82 to 0.91. The correlations. Among the same dimensions from different scales reported in Table 2, i.e., 0.81, 0.66, 0.72, 0.73, and 0.59, indicate relatively high levels of convergence, especially when they are corrected for measurement error in both variables, i.e., they become 0.98, 0.79, 0.89, 0.89, and 0.77, respectively. Correlations among the personality dimensions, assessed via both the frequency-based and Likert type scales, as well as correlations of the personality dimensions with the motivational variables, are presented in Table 2. We next sought to test for the potential moderating effect of scale format on the correlations among the frequency-based and Likert type big 5 dimensions and between the personality dimensions and the motivation variables. Here we used an application of ListRel 8.7 to test the equivalence of the 2 sections of the correlation matrix, presented in Table 2, representing the correlations among the 5 personality dimensions assessed using each scale, as well as the 2 sections of the matrix representing the correlations with the motivational variables. Specifically, we tested a model in which pairs of correlations between the same variables assessed with the different scale types were constrained to be equal, i.e., 1. The 5-5 submatrix representing the correlations among personality measures assessed using the Likert scale was constrained to be equal to the 5-5 submatrix representing the correlations among the personality measures assessed using the frequency-based May-Ashore, and 2. The 5-7 submatrix representing the correlations between the personality variables assessed with the Likert scale and the motivational variables was constrained to be equal to the 5-7 submatrix representing the correlations between the personality variables assessed with the frequency-based measure and the motivational variables. This test test is essentially a single omnibus test of the equivalence of the appropriate sections of the overall correlation matrix. One benefit of this approach is that it provides for multiple fit indices, in addition to the traditional chi-square-based significance test. We also focused on 3 additional indices that are less dependent on sample size: the Tucker-Lewis index, TLI, root mean square error of approximation, RMSA, and the comparative fit index, CFI. Results of the overall test of equivalence indicated that both the pattern of correlations among the personality dimensions as well as the pattern of correlations with the motivation variables were in fact equivalent, i.e. V2 45 equals 59.02, NS, TLI equals 0.94, CFI equals 0.98, RMSEA equals 0.05. M.S. Fleischer et al. / Journal of Research in Personality XXX, 2011, XXX5. Please cite this article in press as Fleischer, M.S. et al. Assessing with in-person personality variability via frequency estimation. More evidence for a new measurement approach. Journal of Research in Personality, 2011, doi 10.1016/j.jrp.2011.06.009. In addition, an examination of the correlation matrix presented in Table 2 supports most of the expected relationships with the motivational variables. For example, agreeableness was signified Cantley, positively related to communion striving, frequency. R equals 0.34, Likert R equals 0.38, extroversion was positively related to communion striving, frequency R equals 0.21, Likert R equals 0.23, and Kamsai anxiousness was significantly, positively related to achievement striving, frequency R equals 0.32, Likert R equals 0.46, and status striving, frequency R equals 0.21, Likert R equals 0.35. Furthermore, as expected, Kamsai anxiousness was significantly, positively related to LJO, frequency. R equals 0.30, Likert R equals 0.25, and emotional stability was significantly, negatively related to PAGO, frequency R equals 0.33, Likert R equals 0.35, and PPGO, frequency R equals 0.24, Likert R equals 0.35. Finally, NFC was positively related to conscientiousness, frequency R equals 0.23, Likert. R equals 0.17, openness, frequency R equals 0.50, Likert R equals 0.50, and emotional stability, frequency R equals 0.24, Likert R equals 0.22. In general, results supported our prediction that the relationships between the big 5 dimensions and the motivational variables would be comparable when measuring personality using the frequency-based format and the unipolar markers. In fact, across 35 relationships, the mean absolute difference between correlations among the frequency-based measure and motivational variables and correlations among the Likert type measure and motivational variables was only 0.05, SD equals 0.04. 3. Study 2. Study 1 indicated that frequency-based personality assessment is equivalent to traditional measurement approaches with respect to the level of a given personality dimension. It does not, however, address the potential added impact of assessing consistency in the prediction of external criteria. Although research has demonstrated relationships between several big 5 personality factors in task performance, example, Hertz and Donovan, 2000, the magnitude of this relationship is quite variable, example, Bono and Judge, 2004, Peters et al., 2006, Salgado, 2002. We posit that temporal consistency in behavioral expression may moderate the relationship between personality and behavior such that more consistent individuals, i.e., low within item SD for each personality factor, will have stronger relationships between personality and behavior than participants with less consistent behavior, i.e., high within item SD. Thus, in Study 2, we assess the relationship between personality and others' ratings of performance and the extent to which consistency moderates the personality-performance relationship. Here, ratings of task performance were considered an optimal criterion for this study because the purpose is to examine the potential to better predict behavioral outcomes through the use of personal ITY variability information. Several reviews and meta-analyses have summarized empirical relationships between big 5 personality dimensions, task, and team performance, example Barrett, Mount, and Judge, 2001, Hogan and Holland, 2003, Hertz and Donovan, 2000. In a large-scale meta-analysis, Hertz and Donovan, 2000, reported the highest validity coefficients between the big 5 dimensions in task performance as conscientiousness, Q equals 0.16, and emotional stability, Q equals 0.14. The highest validity coefficients reported between the big 5 dimensions. Science and interpersonal facilitation were agreeableness, Q equals 0.20. Emotional stability, Q equals 0.18, and conscientiousness, Q equals 0.17. al., 2001, summarized several earlier meta-analyses and reported these same three dimensions as the best predictors of a teamwork criterion. The corrected validity coefficients were also slightly higher than those reported by Hertz and Donovan for agreeableness, Q equals 0.34, conscientiousness, Q equals 0.27, and emotional stability, Q equals 0.22. Hogan and Holland, 2003, meta-analyzed relationships between personality dimensions and a getting along criterion and demonstrated that the best predictors were adjustment, emotional stability, Q equals 0.34, prudence, conscientiousness, Q equals 0.31, and likability, agreeableness, Q equals 0.23. Recent meta-analyses have also examined team-level personality and performance, Bell, 2007, Peters et al., 2006, and although the dependent variable of the present study was at the individual level, the team-based literature is fairly consistent with the individual Bell data. At the team level, the best predictors of team performance appear to be agreeableness and conscientiousness, Bell, 2007, Peters et al., 2006. Therefore, in the present study, we examined relationships between teamwork/task performance criteria and agreeableness, conscientiousness, and emotional stability. 3.1 Study 2 Method. 3.1.1 Participants undergraduate business students, N equals 136, were recruited to participate in return for extra credit in an upper-level management. Table 2 bivariate correlations among personality level and motivational variables in Study 1. Variable 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 1. Extroversion of 1.02. Agreeableness of 0.241.03. Conscientiousness of 0.05.25, 1.04. Emotional stability of 0.18.03.011.05. Openness to experiencia of 0.32.48.29.231.06. Extroversion 0.81.12.09.12.191.07. Agreeableness 0.19.66.21.12.27.141.08. Conscientiousness 0.11.14. Note: MOQ equals Motivation Orientation Questionnaire, AS equals Accomplishment Striving, SS equals Status Striving, CS 6 MS Fleischer et al. /Journal of Research in Personality XXX, 2011. Please cite this article in prep course. There were 49 males, 86 females, and one participant who did not report their sex. The mean age of participants was 21.8, SD equals 2.06. 3.1.2 measures all participants completed two measures of each of three personality dimensions, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and emotional stability. The first measure was the subset of 30 items corresponding to the three dimensions, 10 items per dimension, assessed with the frequency-based 50-item IPIP scale used in Study 1. The second measure was the subset of 24 items corresponding to the three dimensions, 8 items per dimension, from the 40-item Goldberg mini-marker scale used in Study 1. Although it appears that response format, frequency-based versus lit ERT type, is confounded with scale items, IPIP versus Goldberg mark errors, this was done by design. Our goal in Studies 1 and 2 was to show equivalence for mean level scores across the two tests, example, convergent validity, and that the measure of temporal consistency added information provided only by the frequency-based measure. As such, attested the extent to which equivalence would hold on. Different measures of the same constructs would offer stronger support for convergent validity. Edwards and Bohr, 2007, and Study 1 demonstrated that these two measures are equivalent, thus mitigating concerns regarding a potential confound. Furthermore, these data were collected from the same participants at the same time, which raised concerns about administering the same item stems twice. For example, practice effects could spuriously inflate the equivalence between the Likert and frequency-based formats, because we would have used the same item stems. Participants also provided performance ratings of each of 5 teammates. Participants rated teammates on 3 dimensions of team performance, i.e., frequency of participation, quality of participation, and teamwork skills. Each dimension was assessed with one item utilizing an 11-point scale. The frequency of participation anchors were never 0, sometimes 3, often 7, and always 10 in relation to each individual's performance on the group assignment. Both the quality of participation and teamwork skills items anchors were unacceptable 0, fair, 3, good, 7, and excellent 10 in relation to each individual's performance in comparison to the performance of other group members on the assignment. Overall performance ratings for each individual were obtained by taking the average of the peer ratings across the 5 raters for each item. The 3 peer evaluation items, frequency of participe cation, Quality of participation and teamwork skills were highly correlated with one another, with Rs ranging between 0.83 and 0.87. Therefore, an exploratory factor analysis was performed to determine if a single factor could explain the responses to these items. A principal axis factor analysis indeed revealed a single factor. Only one factor produced an eigenvalue greater than 1, 2.71, and this factor explained 85% of the variance in the items. Factor loadings ranged between 0.91 and 0.95. Based on these results, further analyses focused on a unit-weighted composite, sum of these three items, i.e., total peer evaluation. Coefficient alpha for this three-item composite was 0.95. Also, prior to aggregating the ratings, inter-rater agreement was assessed using James, Demery, and Wolf's 1984 RWG-J. In the sample of peer evaluation data, RWG-J was computed across the 5 raters for each team member on the 3-item performance scale. Average RWG-J was 0.94, SD equals 0.14. 3.1.3 Procedure: all participants completed the personality measures via online survey prior to participating in a group project. As part of a larger set of course requirements, participants worked together on a semester-long group project. The group project was created to simulate an organizational work team. Groups consisting of 6 randomly assigned participants were required to develop an idea for a new business and deliver several written reports and present a tie-in regarding how they would launch the new business, compete with other companies, and maintain and grow the company during its first few years. At the end of the semester, students were asked to rate the performance of their team members using the 3 RAT IMG items described above. 3.2 Study 2 Results. Descriptive statistics and bivariate correlations for all variables are presented in Table 3. Once again, the frequency-based scale demonstrated comparable reliability and convergent validity with the unipolar markers measure. As in Study 1, we examined differences between coefficient alphas provided by the frequency-based and Likert-type measures for each of the 3 personality diamond science using Bonnet's 2003 Fisher-Bonnet approach, Kim and Felt 2008. Of 3 comparisons, no differences were statistically significant. We also calculated coefficient alpha for the indices of temporal consistency from the frequency-based scale for each dimension. These values ranged from 0.85 to 0.87. Similar to the findings in Study 1, the mean personality scores provided by the FRE-Quincy-based measure converged to an acceptable degree with the mean scores provided by the Likert-type unipolar markers. For example, the correlations among the same dimensions from different scales reported in Table 3, i.e., 0.55, 0.71, and 0.72, indicate. Table 3 Descriptive statistics and bivariate correlations for all variables in Study 2. Variable, MSD 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Frequency-based if of 1. Agreeableness 5.260.75.722. Agree WSD 4.090.85.77 asterisk asterisk 0.873. Conscientiousness 4.960.90.40 asterisk asterisk 0.41 asterisk asterisk 0.794. Const WSD 4.000.86.46 asterisk asterisk 0.66 asterisk asterisk 0.68 asterisk asterisk 0.865. Emotional unipolar markers 7. Note. MS Fleischer et al. /Journal of Research. Please cite this article in press as Fleischer. Acceptable convergent validity, especially when corrected. Acceptable convergent validity, especially when corrected for May-Sherman error in both variables, i.e., 0.73, 0.88, and 0.87, respectively. At the mean level, only conscientiousness from the frequency-based scale was significantly related to peer ratings of individual performance, R equals 0.20. In order to test the hypothesis that temporal stability motor attest the relationship between personality and performance ratings, moderated multiple regressions were performed by centering the main effects. Example, personality dimension scores, personality dimension within item SD values, computing the cross products of these values for each dimension, and entering each in a hierarchical regression for each personality dimension, Cohen, West, and Aiken, 2003. However, a potential concern regarding within item SD is that variability is necessarily restricted for extreme level scores. In other words, an individual with very low or very high trait level also would have low variability. This would lead to a nonlinear relationship between level and variability, which could mask the nonlinear relationship between level and the criterion. Levinsky and Humphreys, 1990, Ponanen, 1988, Ponanen and Jackson, 1985. Therefore, we computed a quadratic term as the square of each personality variable and entered this term at the second step in the hierarchical regression analyses after the mean level. In step 3, we entered the within item SD fault load by the interaction in step 4. Thus, we conducted a 4-step hierarchical regression for each personality dimension. This was done to ensure that any interaction effects found for the frequency-based measure would remain significant above and beyond the main effects and the quadratic, nonlinear term. 3 moderated multiple regressions were performed for agreeableness, conscientiousness, and emotional stability with the peer ratings of individual performance as the dependent variable. Significant interactions were found for agreeableness and conscientiousness. Table 4. Further, an examination of the simple slopes for both personality dimensions revealed that individuals demonstrating lower within item variability exhibited stronger relationships between personality and performance than did individuals with higher within item variability. More specifically, the sample was split into 2 subsamples of participants for each dimension, one with low within item SD scores and one with high within item SD scores. At low levels of agreeableness within item SD, the correlation between agreeableness and total peer evaluation was or equals 0.25. At high levels of agreeableness within item SD, the correlation between agreeableness and total peer evaluation was or equals 0.14. At low levels of conscientiousness within item SD, the correlation between conscientiousness and total peer evaluation was or equals 0.39. At high levels of conscientiousness within item SD, the correlation between conscientiousness and total peer evaluation was or equals 0.16. This information is presented graphically in figures 1 and 2. One potential concern is reflected in the mean value for the overall performance measure. Specifically, performance scale scores potentially ranged from 0 to 30 and the mean score was 27.79, SD equals 3.69. Moreover, these ratings demonstrated substantile negative skew, i.e., skewness equals 4.00. This finding of very high and negatively skewed ratings is not uncommon with peer performance ratings in Comey A, Kennedy, and Chan in PRESS. However, it raises the possibility that this underlying distribution may affect the regression analyses. Thus, we calculated a transformed performance rating as the square of the original rating, which served to significantly reduce skewness and increase variability, i.e., SD equals 153.94, skewness equals 2.89. We then repeated all of the Red-Dresham analyses using the transformed performance score as the dependent variable. Results of these analyses indicated slightly larger multiple correlation values, as would be expected with them. Table 4 moderated multiple regression results for personality factor within item standard deviation of personality factor, quadratic term to test for nonlinearity, and the personality factor by within item standard deviation interaction to predict performance in study 2. DV equals total peer evaluation. Step variable BTRR2DR2. 1 agreeableness 0.181.16.00.00.00. 2 agreeableness quadratic 0.301.73.03.00.00. 3 agreeableness WSD 0.161.01.03.00.00. 4 agreeable. 1 emotional note. N equals 100. Figure 1. Interaction between agreeableness and agreeableness. Figure 2. Interaction between conscientiousness. 8 M.S. Fleischer et al. /Journal of Research in Personality XXX. Please cite this article in PRESS as Fleischer, M.S. et al. Assessing within-person personality increased variability, but no substantive differences with respect to results reported in Table 4. Related to the concern noted above, it is possible that the high level of negative skew for the performance measure is potentially reflective of a relatively few outliers at the low end of the rating distribution. In fact, an examination of the distribution of scores on the performance measure indicates 4 outliers with respect to the main body of the distribution. Specifically, these are cases in which performance scores are at least 3 standard deviations below the mean. Of course, it's not clear why these values are so low relative to the rest of the data. This may be bad data, or it may in fact represent a relatively few bad apples with respect to interacting with teammates. Nonetheless, these cases may have a disproportionate impact on the results. To address this, remove these 4 cases from the data set and re-ran all of them. Regression analyses. Removing these cases both decreased overall variability SD for the original data equals 3.69. For the data with outliers removed, SD equals 1.81, and substantially reduced skewness, 4.00 for the original data, 1.51 with outliers removed. We then repeated all of the regression analyses using the data with the outliers removed. Results of these analyses indicated no substantive differences with respect to results reported in Table 4. 4. Study 3. The most common form of personality measurement is the self-report survey, in which respondents are asked questions about themselves and are required to respond through retrospection of their own behavior. Example, Costa and McRae, 1992, Goldberg, 1992, John, Donahue, and Pintle, 1991, using the Likert type response scale. Example, a 5-point scale with anchors 1 equals strongly disagree, 5 equals strongly agree. However, more recent developments in personality measurement have incorporated alternate formats, such as conditional reasoning, James et al., 2005, forced choice, Stark, Chernyshenko, and Drasko, 2005, and frequency-based estimation, Edwards and Bohr, 2007, in the search for measurement systems that are less susceptible to socially desirable responding. In developing the distributional assessment model, Kane, 1986, posited that frequency-based estimation should be less susceptible to deliberate response distortion than traditional performance assess. MED techniques, example, Likert type format, because frequency estimation is less transparent to raters than traditional, example, Likert type approaches. To illustrate, when looking at a Likert type item, it is rather transparent that a high score is the highest point on the scale, example, a 5 out of 5, and that this may be the desirable response. However, when a respondent sees a frequency-based item, it is not as clear what the most desirable response might be, because reporting that you behave in a certain manner 100% of the time may not seem like an optimal way to behave. Similarly, respondents might justify a 5 on a Likert type scale, because oftentimes it is mostly true of them, although at times it may not be, whereas it is hard to justify that you behave in a certain manner 100% of the time. Thus, an assessment paradigm based on frequency estimation has the potential to provide more veridical assessments. Therefore, we hypothesize that scale means on a frequency-based personality measure will be lower than scale means on a Likert type personality measure, using the same item stems when respondents are instructed to fake. Further, we compare means in the frequency and Likert type response formats in honest and fake good conditions and expect to find a significant interaction such that differences between means resulting from honest and fake good instructions for a frequency-based measure will be lower than differences between means resulting from honest and fake good instructions for a Likert type measure. 4.1 Study 3 Method. 4.1.1 Participants and procedure undergraduate students, N equals 476, from 2 large southeastern universities were recruited to participate in return for extra credit in psychology and management courses. The sample was 70% female. The participants' ages ranged from 18 to 52 years, N equals 20.8, SD equals 2.3. The same 50-item IPIP scale was used to measure the Big Five as in Study 1. However, half of the participants completed the measure with a frequency-based format and half completed the measure with a 5-point Likert type format. The item stems were identical for all participants. Data were collected from participants via the same online survey format as in Studies 1 and 2. The present study was a 2 frequency-based format, Likert type format, by 2 honest instructions, fake good instructions, between subjects design in which each participant was randomly assigned to one of 4 conditions: A. Frequency-based response format / honest instructions, B. FRE. Quincy-based response format / fake good instructions, C. Likert. Type response format / honest instructions, or D. Likert type response format / fake good instructions. The honest and fake good instructions were as follows. Honest, please keep in mind that the results of this test have no bearing on you. Therefore, please answer the following case tie-ins on the personality test as honestly as possible. Your answers will remain completely anonymous. Your answers will be used for research purposes only, and will not be used to evaluate you in any way. The nature of the project requires that you answer the following questions as honestly as possible, so please provide as accurate answers as you can, adapted from McFarland, 2000. Fake good. While you are taking this personality test, imagine that you are applying for a job that you would like to get. Please describe yourself in a way that you think will ensure that you will be hired for the job, adapted from Hoff et al., 1990. In the Likert type response format condition, participants were asked to indicate how accurately each of the 50 statements described them over the past 6 months using a 5-point Likert type scale. 1 equals very inaccurate, 5 equals very accurate. A participant's score on each of the 5 factors was obtained by averaging responses on each of the 10 items corresponding to each factor. Means for each dimension from the frequency-based DIBA were calculated in the same manner as in studies 1 and 2, but with a slight deviation. Each response level was assigned a weight of 0.01 for very inaccurate, 0.03 for neither accurate nor inaccurate, and 0.05 for very accurate, and each set of weighted percentages was summed. This weighting is slightly different from the weighting scheme used in the first 2 studies, in which comparisons were made between the frequency-based scale and a 7-point Likert type scale. The weighting used in the present study resulted in a score on each item based on the 5-point Likert type scale. A respondent's score on each of the 5 factors was then obtained by averaging the 10 items corresponding to each factor. 4.2 Study 3 Results. As a preliminary analysis, participants in each of the 4 kindergartens were examined for demographic differences. The frequency-based /fake good condition, N equals 116, was 65.5% female with a mean age of 20.7, SD equals 1.77. The frequency-based /honest condition, N equals 113, was 70.8% female with a mean age of 21.12, SD equals 3.40. The Likert type /fake good condition, N equals 124, was 71% female with a mean age of 20.67, SD equals 2.06. The Likert type /honest condition, N equals 123, was 72.4% female with a mean age of 20.54, SD equals 1.59. M.S. Fleischer et al. Journal of Research in Personality XXX, 2011, XXX 9. Please cite this article in press as Fleischer, M.S. et al. Assessing within-person personality variability via frequency estimation, more evidence for a new measurement approach. Journal of Research in Personality, 2011, doi 10.1016/j.jrp.2011.06.009. T-tests revealed no significant differences among the 4 groups for sex or age. Descriptive information for each scale and internal consistency estimates, i.e., coefficient alpha, are presented in Table 5. As in Studies 1 and 2, we examined differences between coefficient alphas provided by the frequency-based and Likert type measures for each of the Big 5 personality dimensions using Bonnet's 2003, Fisher-Bonnet approach, Kim and Felt, 2008. We performed 5 comparisons using the honest condition samples only, and found no statistically significant differences. In order to test the hypothesis that scale means on a frequency-based personality measure will be lower than scale means on a Likert type personal ITY measure when respondents are instructed to fake, we conduct 2-2 analyses of variance, ANOVAs, for mean scores on each personality construct separately. The results of the 2-2 ANOVAs are presented in Table 6. Main effects for response format. Frequency-based versus Likert type and instruction condition, honest versus fake good, were found for all 5 personality constructs, with the exception of response format for emotional stability, F1, 472, equals 1.99, P equals 0.16. As predicted, there was a statistically significant interaction between response format and instruction condition for conscientiousness, F1, 472, equals 6.23, P less than 0.05, emotional stability, F1, 472, equals 12.29, P less than 0.001, and openness to experience, F1, 472, equals 8.50, P.01. An inspection of the means revealed that differences between honest and faking conditions were significantly greater for the lit ERT type response format than for the frequency-based format. These findings are presented graphically in Figures 3, 5. Although significant differences were found between the honest and faking conditions for the frequency-based response format, these differences were greater for the Likert type response format. Moreover, the differences were such that mean scale scores were higher in Table 5 sample sizes, means, standard deviations, and reliability estimates, coefficient A, for the frequency-based 50-item IPIP scale and the 50-item Goldberg IPIP scale for each of the Big 5 dimensions for each condition in Study 3. Condition and extroversion agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, openness to experience. Frequency based honest 113 M3.22 A3.88 A3.58 A3.02 A3.56 ASD 0.67 0.56 0.61 0.67 0.47 a 0.82 0.76 0.79 0.83 faking 116 M3.33 F 3.98 of 3.86 B 3.38 B 3.76 B SD 0.61 0.55 0.66 Big Five personality dimensions for effects by dimension F, extroversion response, agreeableness response, conscientiousness, emotion. Figure 4. Bar graph of emotional stability. 10 MS Fleischer et al. /Journal of Reason. Please cite this article in press at the fake good condition than the honest condition, Table 5. These results supported the hypothesis that scores from the frequency-based personality format would be significantly less influenced by instructions to fake than scores from the Likert-type personality format. Although interactions for extroversion F1 472 equals 1.18, P equals 0.28, and agreeableness F1 472 equals 0.67, P equals 0.41 were not statistically significant, the trends were in the hypothesized direction. Specify Cali. Significant differences between instruction conditions were found for the Likert-type format, but not for the frequency-based format for both extroversion and agreeableness when the response formats were examined in isolation. For extroversion, there was no difference between honest and faking conditions for the frequency-based scale F1 472 equals 1.32, P equals 0.25, whereas the Likert-type scale demonstrated a significant mean difference between the honest and faking conditions F1 472 equals 7.62. P less than 0.01. The mean extroversion scale score was significantly greater. In fake good condition, N equals 3.76, then in the honest condition, N equals 3.52 for the Likert-type response format. The results were very similar for agreeableness. No differences were found between honest and faking conditions for the frequency-based scale F1 472 equals 2.34, P equals 0.13, whereas the Likert-type scale demonstrated a significant mean difference between the honest and faking conditions F1 472 equals 7.67, P less than 0.01. Like extroversion, the mean agreeableness scale score was significantly greater in fake good condition, N equals 4.32, than in the honest condition, N equals 4.14, for the Likert-type response format. These results are presented graphically in figures 6 and 7. Effect sizes, i.e., Cohen's d, for the differences between honest and faking condition means are presented in Table 7. Effect sizes for mean differences across instruction conditions are larger for the Likert-type format than the frequency-based format. The between subjects effect sizes reported by Viswesbron and Ones 1999 are also shown in Table 7 to compare with the present results. The meta-analysis by Viswesbron and Ones covered personality faking literature that has used Likert-type measures. Consistent with the results of the present study, the honest versus faking effect sizes for the frequency-based scale were smaller than those reported by Viswesbron and Ones for other measures of the Big Five. 5. Discussion. The present study adds to the growing trend in psychological science of assessing within-person variability in the measurement of personality. Example, Baird et al., 2006, Fisher, 2000, Gleason, 2001, Gibbons and Rupp, 2009, Hegestad et al., 2009, Wang et al., 2009, Judge Gillies, and Scott, 2006. The results of the present research demonstrated that the psychometric properties of a frequency-based personality measure of the Big Five are adequate and similar to other measures of the Big Five. Further, frequency-based personality measures have the added advantage over traditional Likert-type approaches of providing an index of temporal consistency, i.e., within item SD, that can be obtained from a single administration rather than requiring multiple administrations of the same measure. Two of the major criticisms of personality research are that personality is a relatively weak predictor of behavior and that direct personality measures are rather transparent and, i.e., susceptible to response distortion. We posit that frequency-based estimation in personality measurement can help address each of these two criticisms. Thus, the present research focused on two primary objectives. A. To examine the extent to which temporal consistency in personality, i.e., within item SD, moderates relationships between the Big Five personality diamond science and behavior, and B. To compare the susceptibility to deliberate response distortion of a frequency-based personality measure versus a traditional Likert-type personality measure. Study 2 examines the first objective and Study 3 the second. The results of Study 1 replicated and extended those of Edwards and Rohr, 2007, and showed that the frequency-based personal ITY format and Likert-type format demonstrated similar relationships with self-reported motivational constructs as well as comparable psychometric properties. In addition, we operationalized behavior in terms of teamwork/task performance as the criteria in Study 2 to examine the extent to which temporal. Figure 5. Bar graph of openness to experience means in Study 3. Figure 6. Bar graph of extroversion means in study 3. Figure 7. Bar graph of agreeableness means in study 3. Table 7 effect sizes, Cohen's D, for differences between instructions to fake and instructions to respond honestly on each of the big 5 dimensions in study 3 and from Viswesvaran and Wonses, 1999, meta-analysis. Dimension frequency by Ida Liebert type head Viswesvaran and Wons, 1999. Extroversion 0.16, 0.33, 0.63 agreeableness 0.19, 0.39, 0.48 consciousness 0.45, 0.83, 0.60 emotional stability 0.52, 1.06, 0.64 openness to experience 0.39, 0.92, 0.65. AN equals 229. BN equals 247. MS Fleischer et al. / Journal of Research in Personality XXX 2011, XXX 11. Please cite this article in press as Fleischer, M.S. et al. Assessing with in-person personality variability via frequency estimation, more evidence for a new measurement approach. Journal of Research in Personality, 2011, doi 10.1016/j.jrp.2011.06.009. Consistency influenced ratings of behavior provided by knowledge-able others. The results of study 2 supported our personality behavior moderation hypothesis for 2 of 3 personality dimensions. For both agreeableness and conscientiousness, the index of tempo consistency, uniquely provided by frequency-based measurement, moderated the relationship between mean-level personality and individual performance. More specifically, we obtained stronger agreeableness, performance, and conscientiousness performance relationships among individuals with lower within item SD, i.e., greater consistency. It is not surprising that we obtained our results for agreeableness and conscientiousness because the behavioral markers for these 2 personality characteristics are among the more outwardly observable, such that in the present context, team members would be most sensitive to variability in agreeableness and conscientiousness. The primary implication is that behavioral variability is a viable explanation for personality-behavior relationships. It is entirely likely that personality is predictive of behavior for some people, but not others, and that consistency in behavioral expression is a likely explanation. For example, in study 2, there was a non-significant bivariate relationship between agreeableness and performance. However, separating the participants into groups high and low in behavioral consistency showed that the relationship was equals 0.25 for those with consistent behavioral expression which, although small to moderate, was statistically significant and higher than the relationship between agreeableness and interpersonal facilitation, Q equals 0.20, reported by Hertz and Donovan, 2000. What was also interesting was the small correlation between agreeableness and performance in the inconsistent sample, R equals 0.14, that was in the opposite direction and presumably cancelled out the positive correlation in the consistent sample, thus yielding a non-significant bivariate correlation in the overall SAM-PLE. Furthermore, the uncorrected bivariate correlation between conscientiousness and performance for the consistent sample in study 2 was R equals 0.39, which is far stronger than previous employee selection research would suggest. In addition to providing more precision in predicting behavior, we also predicted that frequency-based measurement may be more resistant to response distortion than traditional Likert-type MEA. Shores. The results of study 3 provided evidence to this effect. Significant interactions were found between response format and instruction condition for 3 personality traits, i.e., conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness to experience, such that deliberate response distortion was larger for participants who completed a Likert-type measure than for participants who completed a frequency-based measure. Although significant interactions were not found for extroversion and agreeableness, the trends were in the predicted direction. Thus, our primary hypothesis in study 3 was supported for 3 out of 5 personality dimensions. The results of study 3 have implications for the measurement of personality in high-stakes applied settings, example, clinical, IO, developmental, where response distortion on personality scales is a concern. The more recent efforts to prevent respondents from engaging in response distortion are focused on investigating native response formats, such as conditional reasoning, James et al. 2005, and forced choice, Stark et al. 2005, formats. However, there are limitations to the aforementioned alternative formats. Thus, the primary implication of results reported in study 3 is that response distortion can be mitigated by the use of a simple alternative format, frequency estimation-based assessment, which can be easily adapted to existing personality measures. We should note that there are researchers who question the external validity of instructed faking designs such as the one we used in study 3. We would concur that the effects we obtained in study 3 are not a likely indicator of the level of response distortion one would expect to obtain in a high-stakes testing environment. However, our use of the instructed faking design was to demonstrate that conscious response distortion was consistently lower with the frequency-based measure than the Likert-based measure in a relative sense. That is, because the frequency estimation-based format still relies on self-report, the potential for response distortion cannot be eliminated, but it is expected to be lower than with traditional Likert-type scales. We would also urge readers to consider the results of Study 3 within the context of all the research on frequency estimation-based personality measurement. Specify Cali, a pattern has emerged in other studies, i.e., Edwards and Ward, 2007, Studies 1 and 2 of the present research, in which mean scores of frequency-based personality assessment are consistently lower than mean scores from Likert-type scales. Furthermore, we have provided a strong theoretical rationale for why we would expect mean scores on the frequency estimation-based scale to be lower than mean from a Likert-type scale. In conclusion, the present studies as well as previous research, example Edwards and Ward, 2007, have provided a favorable body of evidence for frequency estimation-based personality measurement, thus opening the door for future research in this area. Previous research has highlighted the context sensitivity of both frequency-based judgments of emotions, SCIMAC, 2002, and Likert-type judgments of the Big Five, example Schmidt, Ryan, Stierwald, and Powell, 1995. Future research should address the context sensitivity of frequency-based judgments of the Big Five. It may be that a frequency-based personality scale framed in a work-specific, or other, context would demonstrate different internal properties and or relationships with external criteria than the more general frequency-based measure used in the present study. Also, the generally positive findings reported here suggest that frequency-based measurement may be a fruitful area of research if extended to other constructs, such as affect, emotion, or any other variables with state-like properties. Researchers and practitioners should be aware that it is likely that it will take participants longer to complete the frequency-based measure than the traditional Likert-type measure. However, this limitation can really be considered a compromise. One of the primary advantages of our frequency-based approach is that it captures variance and consistency, similar to ESM, but requires only a single test administration. Thus, although the frequency-based measure may require additional time to complete, this time commitment is considerably less than that involved in studies using ESM or any other multiple administration method. Appendix A. At point 1, example item for the Likert-type response format. Response options. 1. Very inaccurate. 2. Inaccurate. 3. Somewhat inaccurate. 4. Neither inaccurate nor accurate. 5. Somewhat accurate. 6. Patterns of mean level change in personality traits across the life course, a meta-analysis of longitudinal studies. Brett W., Roberts, and Kate E., Walton University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Wolfgang Wiesbauer University of Maastricht. The present study used meta-analytic techniques, number of samples 92, to determine the patterns of mean level change in personality traits across the life course. Results showed that people increase in measures of social dominance, a facet of extroversion, conscientiousness, and emotional stability, especially in young adulthood aged 20 to 40. In contrast, people increase on measures of social vitality, a second facet of extroversion, and openness in adolescence, but then decrease in both of these domains in old age. Agreeableness changed only in old age. Of the 6 trait categories, 4 demonstrated significant change in middle and old age. Gender and nutrition had minimal effects on change, whereas longer studies and studies based on younger cohorts showed greater change. Keywords: personality change, meta-analysis, mean level change, personality development. How do people change in terms of personality traits across the life course? Despite the common perspective that personality traits, relatively enduring patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behavior, do not change, numerous longitudinal studies have now recorded mean level changes in traits at various ages across the life course. Hahn, Millsap, and Hartka, 1986. Helson and Mohn, 1987. Helson and Wing, 1992. Roberts, Caspi, and Moffat, 2001, Robbins, Fraley, Roberts, and Trzcinski, 2001. It is assumed that mean level change, sometimes referred to as absolute change or normative change, Caspi and Roberts, 1999, reflects generalizable patterns of personality development that apply to most people. However, it is difficult to draw definitive conclusions regarding the nature of mean level change because longitudinal studies track changes in personality traits in particular samples by using distinct measures over specific times of the life course, which results in somewhat idiosyncratic findings that are sometimes contradictory. For example, Costa and McRae, 1997, argued on the basis of their longitudinal studies that there is little meaningful mean level change in any personality traits past the age of 30, Costa, Hurst, McRae, and Siegler, 2000. In contrast, others have argued that personality traits continue to change in middle and old age, Helson, Jones, and Kwan, 2002, Helson and Kwan, 2000, Shrivastava, John, Gosling, and Potter, 2003. One solution to the debate over whether personality traits demonstrate systematic changes in any given period of the life course is to synthesize the existing longitudinal studies by using meta-analytic techniques, example, Roberts and Delvecchio, 2000. A meta-analytic approach affords several advantages to any single longitudinal study. First, by examining change across studies, we can effectively control for the nature of the samples used in existing longitudinal efforts and weight findings from larger samples more heavily. Also, we can use the Big Five taxonomy of personality traits, John and Shrivastava, 1999, to organize measures into domains that are not specific to individual personality inventories. The Big Five taxonomy organizes most trait terms and personality inventory scales into 5 broad categories: extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness to experience. By using the Big Five taxonomy to organize findings, we can create a common conceptual framework that makes it possible to synthesize the results across questionnaires, including those that were not created with the Big Five in mind. Finally, we can put together data for most of the life course, a possibility seldom realized by individual longitudinal studies. Having data from the majority of the life course allows difficult questions to be addressed, such as whether people change more during specific time periods, example adolescence, young adulthood, middle age, and whether people continue to show normative changes in middle age and beyond. In the present study, we have assembled the largest meta-analytic database of longitudinal studies of mean-level personality change in existence in order to address the question of how personality traits change across the life course. We will first review how change is defined, then the patterns of personality change we expect given previous research and theory on personality development in adulthood, and finally the potential moderators of mean-level change. Can personality traits be both consistent and changeable? Personality traits are indisputably consistent across time and age, Fraley and Roberts, 2005, Roberts and Delvecchio, 2000. It is Brett W. Roberts and Kate Walton, Department of Psychology, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Wolfgang Beachbauer, Department of Psychology, University of Maastricht, the Netherlands. Preparation of this article was supported by grants from the National Institute on Aging, R03AG19414, 01AG21178, and the Research Board at the University of Illinois. We thank Tim Bogg, Robert McRae, Brent Domelin, Scott Morris, Sue Duvall, and Ravenna Helson for helpful comments on drafts of this article. Correspondence concerning this article should be addressed to Brent W. Psychological Bulletin Copyright 2006 by the American Psychological 1. Common to believe that if a struct demonstrates temporal consistency, it does not change. Unfortunately, this conclusion is often premature and sometimes simply incorrect. This misunderstanding stems from a semantic problem with the use of such terms as stability, consistency, and change. These terms are often used too broadly and interchangeably and, when used as such, fail to take into account the fact that continuity and change come in many forms and can also occur simultaneously. They are not the opposites of one another. Locke, 1971. In most longitudinal studies, consistency is operationalized as rank order consistency, which refers to the relative placement of individuals within a group over time. Change is most often defined as mean level change, which refers to whether a group of people increases or decreases on trait dimensions over time. The existence of consistency, at least defined in terms of rank order consistency, does not preclude the existence of change, especially mean level change over time. For example, the numbers x, 1, 2, 3, 4 show perfect rank order consistency, R1, with the numbers y, 2, 4, 6, 8, but yet a clear change in mean level. On the other hand, Pairing the same x with y, 4, 6, 6, 4, yields 0 rank order consistency, R0, and still the same amount of mean level change. Therefore, rank order consistency and mean level change are better thought of as independent or orthogonal constructs. Conceptually and empirically, both can exist simultaneously. Locke, 1971, Caspi and Roberts, 1999, Funder and Colvin, 1991. Furthermore, there are now a number of clear empirical cases where it has been demonstrated that rank order consistency and mean level change coexist in the same longitudinal study. Hahn et al., 1986. Mortimer, Finch, and Kumka, 1982. Roberts et al., 2001. Roberts, Helson, and Clonin, 2002. Robbins et al., 2001. Mean level change in personality traits is often equated with normative change in personality. Normative change occurs when most people change in the same way during a specific period within the life course. Normative changes are thought to result from maturational or historical processes shared by a population. Example, Pelson and Mohn, 1987, McRae et al., 2000. These shared processes could be biological in origin, such as the general period when adolescence is begun or when menopause occurs in women. Example, Pelson and Wing, 1992. The timing of these biological phenomena is partially driven by genetic factors and tends to happen within a specific period of the life course for most people in a particular population of interest. It also is possible that normative changes in personality traits arise because of engagement in normative life tasks and roles, such as leaving home, establishing a family, and starting a career, for example, which all happen in the period of young adulthood. Helson, Kwan, John, and Jones, 2002, Roberts, Wood, and Smith, 2005. Needless to say, change is a multifaceted construct, Caspi and Roberts, 1999. In addition to being tracked with rank order consistency and mean level change, change also can be tracked in the structure of trait covariances. Example, the longitudinal consistency in the factor structure, Small, Herzog, Holch, and Dixon, 2003, and in individual differences in change, Roxek and Spiro, 2003, Roberts, 1997. The existence of individual differences in change qualifies the inference that change does or does not occur and that changes are normative. For example, when there are no mean level changes over time, there may still be robust individual differences in change. Subsets of individuals may be increasing and decreasing and thus offsetting each other's change, resulting in no mean level change overall. Moreover, the occurrence of normative trends does not imply that all people change in the same direction. For example, in one longitudinal study, Roberts et al., 2001, most individuals decreased in negative emotionality in young adulthood. Despite this general trend to decrease, a subset of individuals actually increased. Nonetheless, most people decreased in negative emotionality, and it is this trend that is captured in the overall mean level change patterns that will be examined in this study. The meta-analysis presented here will focus exclusively on mean level change in personality traits over time. To the extent that these changes are consistent across studies, we can begin to draw conclusions concerning whether the changes are normative in that most people demonstrate a distinct pattern of change in personality traits. Theories of personality trait development. In his review of personality and aging, Kogan, 1990, highlighted 3 theoretical approaches to personality trait development. The first model is the classical psychometric theory or trait model of personality development. See also Conley, 1984. The exemplar trait theory of personality development in adulthood is the 5-factor theory of personality, McRae and Costa, 1999. According to this perspective, traits remain so stable in adulthood that they are essentially temperaments and are impervious to the influence of the environment. In terms of personality traits, the 5-factor theory clearly states that traits develop through childhood and reach maturity in adulthood and are thereafter stable in cognitively intact individuals, McRae and Costa, 1999, page 145, and that this pattern holds across cultures, McRae and Costa, 1994, McRae et al., 2000. Personality trait development is thus presummed to be governed by temperament or genetic factors rather than environmental influences or experiences. Therefore, the patterns of mean level change demonstrated by various samples must be attributed to genetic factors that define propensities to grow in specific directions at specific ages during the life course. The second theoretical approach, highlighted by Kogan, 1990, emphasizes the role of the environment. These contextual models focus on the effect of environmental contingencies often contained within social roles and how they affect personality. Example, Grimm, 1965. The prototypical contextual approach to understanding personality development is to focus on more microanalytic social, cognitive units of analysis. Example, Bandura, 1999, Zelli and Dodge, 1999. Social or cognitive units of analysis are by definition context-bound constructs, such as social skills, competencies, and personal goals. Rather than presupposing consistency, as is done in trait models, personality consistency is thought to emerge through one's transactions with the social environment, Zelli and Dodge. 1999. This model does little to inform perspectives on mean level changes in personality traits, as it limits its focus to phenomena that are presumably not trait-like. Moreover, from an extreme contextual perspective, mean level change would result from environmental contingencies that are mostly unpredictable. Therefore, patterns of mean level change also would be relatively unpredictable. Lewis, 1999. According to Kogan, 1990, the third set of developmental models emphasizes the transactions between the traits and contexts across the life course and is therefore interactional. The most contextual of the interactional models is Levinson's, 1978, which 2. Roberts, Walton, and Beachbauer focuses on the building of life structures in childhood, early adulthood, middle adulthood, and late adulthood. Life structures represent the basic pattern or design of a person's life and largely reflect the interplay between self-driven goals and societal and age-rated roles. As this perspective is most relevant to the pattern of social roles across the life course, it does not provide information pertinent to the development of personality traits. Similarly, Erikson's 1950 stage theory emphasizes the change and emergence of specific life tasks and associated crises at different ages. This perspective also essentially ignores personality trait development. More recently, Baltas, 1997, Baltas, Lindenberger, and Staudinger, 1998, has enumerated the lifespan development AP approach, which proposes a dialectic between consistency and change over the life course, with adaptation being the primary focus of development. The lifespan perspective specifies that people are open systems and that they exhibit both continuity and change in personality throughout the life course. Furthermore, according to the lifespan model, the effects of psychological, social, and cultural factors diminish as people grow older, often as a result of selection, optimization, and compensation processes. Baltas et al., 1998. Recently, Roberts and Caspi, 2003, proposed an alternative theory of personality trait development consistent with Baltas's 1997 lifespan approach. See also Roberts and Wood, in Press. This theory proposes that identity processes can help explain the patterns of continuity and change in personality traits across the life course. Specifically, the development of a strong identity and certain facets of identity structure, such as identity achievement and certainty, are positively related to many of the mechanisms that promote personality continuity. Furthermore, with age, a person's identity becomes clarified and strengthened, and this helps to explain the increasing continuity in personality traits across the life course. Finally, making normative commitments to the conventional social institutions necessary to create an identity, example, work, marriage, family, community, gives rise to the increases in traits associated with psychological maturity, such as agreeableness, conscientiousness, and emotional stability. See also Roberts, Caspi, and Moffat, 2003, Roberts and Wood, in Press. These investments in conventional social institutions are presumed to facilitate increases in these three core domains of the Big Five. The theories of adult development range from static to dynamic. If adult development conforms to the more static form of trait models, then we should expect few, if any, systematic mean level changes across the life course. A similar conclusion can be drawn from the contextualist approach, as the driving force behind development will be the immediate situation of any one person or group of persons. Moreover, because our samples are drawn from dramatically different cohorts ranging from the generations that experienced the Great Depression to the generations that grew up in the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, one would assume little consistency in the pattern of mean level change across these studies. Therefore, from a contextualist perspective, we would not expect clear patterns of development across the life course because immediate situations and cohort differences are relatively unpredictable, as are their consequences. Lewis, 1999. The interactional models all emphasize the continued dynamic nature of the life course beyond adolescence and therefore imply that development would occur in adulthood, even in terms of personality traits. 1. Consistent theme across these interactional models is the critical nature of young adulthood. This is a period in which identities are resolved and people make commitments to life paths. Arnett, 2000. Consequently, substantial changes in personality traits are expected to occur during this critical period. Finally, Baltas, 1997, emphasized the plastic nature of psychological functioning across the life course, highlighting the possibility for changes to happen even in middle and old age. We will compare our findings with these broad generalizations about personality development in adulthood to see which perspective comes closest to capturing the empirical patterns of mean level change across the life course. Is there a pattern to mean level changes in personality traits? Despite the publication of numerous longitudinal studies in the last few decades, there was, until recently, a surprising paucity of statements or claims concerning normative trends in personality traits over the life course. In part, this lack of a coherent descriptive picture was a result of an emphasis on the more general question of whether personality changes occur at all during the life course. Until recently, the dominant perspective was that once adulthood is reached, which happens around age 30, there is no subsequent change in personality traits. McRae and Costa, 1994. Specifically, on the basis of their interpretation of existing longitudinal studies, McRae and Costa concluded that there is no relationship between mean levels of personality traits and age in cross-sectional studies of personality, nor are there age-related trends in longitudinal data. Costa and McRae, 1994-1997. A more differentiated perspective has emerged recently from both cross-sectional studies and two new narrative overviews of the evidence for personality trait change in adulthood. First, McRae et al., 1999, reported cross-sectional mean level differences across the Big Five in 5 different cultures. In contrast to earlier reports, McRae et al. Reported mean level differences between individuals over the age of 30 and younger people in several cultures for neuroticism, extroversion, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. Specifically, older individuals scored higher on agreeableness and conscientiousness and lower on extraversion, neuroticism, and openness. See also Srivastava et al., 2003. Helson and Kwan, 2000, reviewed data from 3 cross-sectional studies and 3 longitudinal studies that covered the majority of the life course from age 20 to age 80 and found evidence for significant mean level change in select personality traits across the life course. For example, they reported increases of a little under half a standard deviation in norm orientation, which could be construed as a facet of conscientiousness. They argued that previous research on extroversion has overlooked the fact that there are 2 components to extroversion, namely, social dominance and social vitality, which demonstrate distinctly different maturational patterns. Specifically, social dominance reflects such traits as dominance, independence, and self-confidence, especially in social contexts. On the other hand, social vitality corresponds more closely to traits like sociability, positive affect, gregariousness, and energy level. According to Helson and Kwan's review, people increase in measures of social dominance and decrease in measures of social vitality with age. Finally, Helson and Kwan presented data indicating small increases in patterns of mean level change 3. Openness, with some contradictory evidence across cross-sectional and longitudinal studies. Finally, Robbins, Caspi, and Trzynski, 2003, reviewed a more comprehensive list of cross-sectional and longitudinal studies than previously captured in narrative reviews. According to their interpretation of the data, there is evidence for increases in social dominance and decreases in social vitality, as Helson and Kwan, 2000, proposed. They also argued that May assures of agreeableness and conscientiousness increase across the life course from age 18 to over age 60, and that neuroticism tends to decrease with age, possibly reaching a plateau in old age. Finally, they found a complex pattern of change for measures of openness, with some evidence for increases in early young adulthood and contradictory evidence for later portions of the life course. The primary goal of this meta-analysis was to test whether the evidence in the longitudinal database is consistent with theoretical and narrative descriptions of personality trait development in adulthood as described above. On the basis of a modified Big Five framework, with extroversion further divided into social vitality and social dominance, we expected to find that traits from the domain of social vitality decrease with age, while traits from social dominance increase. We also expected to find traits from the domains of agreeableness, conscientiousness, and emotional STA ability to increase with age, and traits from the domain of openness to experience to show little or no change or to decrease slightly. We also attempted to identify when and whether personality traits stop changing during the life course, at least in terms of mean level change. A final goal was to identify the critical periods during the life course when the largest changes occur. Moderators of mean level change in personality traits. One distinct advantage of a meta-analytic approach is the opportunity to test potential moderators of changes in personality traits across the life course. We considered 4 potential motivators. First, we examined the effect of sex on the patterns of change in personality traits. Although claims for and against sex differences in personality development have been made in the past, Gutman, 1987, Helson, Powell, and Solomon, 1997, Roberts et al., 2001, comparisons have yet to be made across different longitudinal studies. The most concrete hypothesis about sex differences in adult personality trait development is the crossover hypothesis, Gutman, 1987. According to this perspective, Men and women change differently in middle age because of shifting demands of gender-related sex roles. Presumably, men become more nurturing and emotional with age, especially during the transition from young adulthood to middle age, because of the shift from the self-focused drive of occupational success in young adulthood to the more generative role of family patriarch in midlife. In contrast, women are expected to become less nurturing and emotional and more confident and dominant, because of the shifting focus away from the family to a potential career as children grow older and leave home. Gutman, 1987. Roberts and Helson, 1997. Wink and Helson, 1993. Accordingly, we should observe larger increases on measures of agreeableness for men between the age of 40 and 60, whereas women should increase more so than men on measures of social dominance in the same age period. No previous research has led us to believe that men and women should differ in their development on other traits at any age period. A second moderator considered in this meta-analysis is the effect of time on the patterns and magnitude of change in personality traits. The length of time between assessments has a known negative effect on rank order consistency, implying that larger changes occur as more time passes between assessments. Whether this effect holds for a different metric of change, such as mean level change, has never been examined. The third moderator we tested, namely, attrition, is one of the most problematic study features in longitudinal research. Attrition apparently has little effect on estimates of rank order consistency, Roberts and Delvecchio, 2000. Nonetheless, given the typical findings that individuals who remain in longitudinal studies are more conscientious, example, Robbins et al., 2001, we suspect that attrition may have an effect on the magnitude and types of changes demonstrated by longitudinal studies, especially in the domain of conscientiousness. Finally, we tested the effect of cohort standing, meaning the year when the sample of any given longitudinal study was born. It has been shown in several cases that cohort standing is related to level of psychological functioning on such traits as neuroticism and extroversion. For example, Twenge, 2000, 2001, 2002, has reported that younger cohorts are more neurotic and extrovert than older cohorts. Differences in mean levels across